Mom told my pregnant wife to eat in the restroom for a perfect day. So I left and cut every lifeline, turning their celebration into ruin. My name is David, and I'm 34 years old. I work in private equity and have done pretty well for myself over the years. My wife Sarah is 28 and currently 6 months pregnant with our first child. She's absolutely glowing, and I couldn't be more excited about becoming a father. The story I'm about to tell you involves my mother, Linda, my sister Jessica, and Jessica's new husband Mark. It's about family, respect, and what happens when people forget where their comfortable lifestyle actually comes from. Let me give you some background first. Growing up, our family wasn't wealthy. My father passed away when I was 16, leaving behind significant medical debt. Mom worked double shifts at a diner to keep us afloat, and I started working part-time jobs as soon as I was old enough. Jessica, being 4 years younger, had it a bit easier because by the time she was in high school, I was already contributing to household expenses. I worked my way through college with scholarships and loans, then landed an entry-level position at a small investment firm. Through sheer determination and some lucky breaks, I eventually made it to where I am today. As my income grew, I made sure to take care of my family. I paid off Mom's mortgage 5 years ago and transferred the deed to my name for tax benefits and estate planning purposes. When Mom's arthritis got bad, and she couldn't work at the diner anymore, I set up a monthly allowance that covers all her living expenses. She lives comfortably in the house that's technically mine but has been her home. Jessica met Mark 2 years ago at the hospital where she works. He's a decent guy, works in IT, makes okay money. When they got engaged last year, I paid for the wedding, all $35,000 of it. Mom wanted Jessica to have the perfect day she never got to have herself, and I was happy to make that happen. Mark's family contributed what they could, but let's just say it wasn't much. Now, here's where things get complicated. Over the years, as I've become more successful, I've noticed a shift in how my family treats me. It's subtle, but it's there. They've become accustomed to my financial support to the point where they've forgotten it's not owed to them. It's a gift. They've also developed some pretty entitled attitudes, especially towards Sarah. Sarah comes from a middle-class family. She's a kindergarten teacher, which means she doesn't make a lot of money, but she loves what she does. She's kind, intelligent, and treats everyone with respect. But from day one, Mom and Jessica have made it clear they think she's not good enough for me. They've made comments about her simple job, her clothes, her family's modest background. It's always bothered me, but Sarah asked me to keep the peace, so I've bitten my tongue. The pregnancy has made things worse. Mom keeps making comments about how Sarah should quit her job and focus on being a proper wife and mother. Jessica has been even more obnoxious, constantly giving unsolicited advice about pregnancy, childbirth, and child rearing, despite never having been pregnant herself. Sarah handles it all with grace, but I can see it wears on her. Last Saturday was Jessica and Mark's first wedding anniversary. Mom decided to throw them a celebration dinner at Bella Vista, this upscale Italian restaurant downtown. It was supposed to be a small family gathering. Just Mom, Jessica, Mark, Mark's parents, Sarah, and me. Mom made the reservation and specifically requested their private dining room, which I knew meant I'd be picking up the bill. Fine by me. I want my sister to be happy. We all met at the restaurant at 6 p.m. Sarah looked beautiful in this navy blue dress that accommodated her growing belly perfectly. She was excited about the dinner, having spent the afternoon baking Jessica's favorite lemon cake from scratch as a surprise. The restaurant is the kind of place where dinner for 8 people easily runs $800 to $1,000, but I told Mom to order whatever she wanted. Everything seemed normal at first. We were seated in the private dining room, looking at menus, making small talk. Mark's parents are nice people. His dad retired from the post office. His mom was a school secretary. They were a bit overwhelmed by the fancy atmosphere, but trying to fit in. Sarah was chatting with Mark's mom about teaching when things took a turn. The waiter came to take our drink orders, and Sarah asked for sparkling water with lemon. Mom immediately frowned and said, "Oh, that's right, you can't drink anything fun anymore." It was said with this fake sympathetic tone that made my skin crawl, but Sarah just smiled and said she was perfectly happy with water. Then Jessica chimed in. "You know, Sarah, Maybe you should consider switching to regular water. I read that carbonated drinks aren't good for the baby. Sarah politely explained that her doctor had said sparkling water was fine, but Jessica kept pushing. Well, I just think it's better to be safe than sorry. A mother should be willing to sacrifice everything for her child. I could see Sarah's jaw tighten, but she just nodded and changed her order to regular water. Strike one. As we waited for our appetizers, Mom started going on about how elegant the restaurant was, how it was so nice to have a proper family dinner in a place with standards. She kept emphasizing these words while looking at Sarah, and I started getting annoyed. But the real fireworks started when our food arrived. Sarah had ordered the seafood risotto, which came in a fairly large portion. She'd eaten about half when she suddenly looked pale and excused herself to go to the bathroom. Pregnancy nausea can hit at random times, and she'd been dealing with it throughout her second trimester. She was gone for about 10 minutes, and when she came back she looked better, but said she needed to take a break from eating. That's when Mom struck. "You know, Sarah," Mom said loudly enough for the whole table to hear. "If you're going to be sick, maybe you should consider eating in the restroom. This is supposed to be Jessica's special day, and we've all dressed up to have a nice dinner at a proper establishment." The table went dead silent. Mark's parents looked mortified. Mark himself was staring at his plate. Jessica was nodding along like Mom was making perfect sense. I felt my blood pressure spike, but before I could say anything, Mom kept going. "Pregnant women really don't belong at nice tables if they can't handle themselves appropriately. This is embarrassing for everyone." Sarah's face went bright red. She looked like she'd been slapped, but Mom wasn't done. "I mean, look around this room. This is a classy place. People come here to enjoy themselves, not to watch someone run back and forth to the bathroom looking green around the gills." That's when Jessica decided to pile on with this nasty smirk on her face. She said, "Mom's right. She's making everyone uncomfortable with her condition. Maybe she should have stayed home if she couldn't handle being in public." I looked around the table. Mark's parents looked like they wanted to disappear into the floor. Mark was still staring at his plate like a coward. Mom and Jessica were both looking at Sarah with these self-satisfied expressions, like they just put her in her place. Sarah's eyes filled with tears, but she held it together. She started to apologize, which made me even angrier. Here was my pregnant wife apologizing for having morning sickness because my family was treating her like garbage. But I didn't explode. I didn't yell. I didn't make a scene. Instead, I did something that probably surprised everyone, including Sarah. I smiled. I stood up calmly, walked around to Sarah's chair, and offered her my hand. "Come on, honey," I said quietly. "Let's go home." Sarah looked up at me with confusion and relief. She took my hand, and I helped her to her feet. I grabbed her purse and the cake she brought, then turned to the table. "Enjoy the rest of your dinner," I said, still smiling. "I hope it's everything you wanted it to be," and we left just like that. No yelling, no dramatic confrontation, no slamming doors. We simply walked out of that private dining room, through the restaurant, and out to the parking lot. In the car, Sarah finally broke down crying. "I'm so sorry, David. I ruined Jessica's dinner. Your mom is right. I shouldn't have come if I was going to be sick." "Don't you dare apologize," I told her. "You did nothing wrong, nothing." I drove her home, made her some tea, and we spent the evening talking about what had happened. Sarah wanted to know what I was planning to do. If I was going to call them. If I was going to demand an apology. I told her not to worry about it, that I would handle everything. She fell asleep around 10 p.m., exhausted from the stress and pregnancy. I tucked her in, then went to my home office and started making some calls. You see, what Mom and Jessica don't understand is that their comfortable lifestyle doesn't exist in a vacuum. Every monthly payment I make, every bill I cover, every luxury they enjoy, it all comes from me. And if they think they can treat my wife like garbage and still expect me to fund their lives, they're about to learn a very expensive lesson. I started with Mom's finances. I've been paying her mortgage for 5 years, but the house is still in my name for tax purposes. I also pay her car insurance, health insurance, utilities, groceries, and give her a monthly allowance of $3,000 for personal expenses. Additionally, I've been putting money into a retirement account for her since she couldn't work anymore. Then there's Jessica. I bought her car outright so she has no car payment. but I pay for her insurance and maintenance. I also set up a savings account for her and Mark with $50,000 as a wedding gift with the understanding that they'd use it for a down payment on a house. I've been contributing to it monthly. Plus, I paid for their honeymoon to Europe last year, $8,000. In total, I calculated that I spend approximately $12,000 per month supporting my mother and sister. That's $144,000 per year. Over the past 5 years, I've invested nearly $750,000 in their comfort and security. Time for them to see what life looks like without my generosity. Starting Monday morning, I began making changes. First, I called the bank and froze the automatic transfers to Mom's accounts. Then, I contacted her utility companies and removed my credit card as the payment method. I did the same with her car insurance and health insurance. I called her mortgage company and informed them that I would no longer be making payments on her behalf. And since the house deed was in my name for tax purposes, I started the process to put it on the market. For Jessica, I froze the joint savings account I'd set up for her and Mark. I contacted her car insurance company and canceled the policy. I also called the credit card company and canceled the card I'd given her for emergencies, the one she'd been using for regular shopping trips. But I wasn't done. I also started looking into some other investments I'd made over the years. The diner where Mom used to work, I bought it 3 years ago when the original owner was going to close it down. I'd kept Mom's former boss as manager and most of the original staff, but I'd put significant money into renovations and updating equipment. It was turning a decent profit now, time to sell it. The house Jessica and Mark are renting, also mine. I bought it as an investment property and rented it to them at significantly below market rate. They're paying $1,200 a month for a place that should rent for $2,000. Their lease was month to month, so I prepared a notice that their rent would increase to market rate starting the following month. I spent Monday and Tuesday setting all of this in motion, making calls, signing papers, meeting with lawyers and real estate agents. I was methodical and thorough, no emotions, just business. Meanwhile, my phone was blowing up. Mom called Sunday evening to complain that I'd left dinner early and embarrassed her in front of Mark's parents. She left 3 voicemails demanding I call her back and explain myself. Jessica sent several texts asking why I was being so dramatic and saying that Sarah needed to toughen up if she was going to be a mother. I didn't respond to any of them. Wednesday morning, Mom's credit card was declined at the grocery store. She called me immediately, panicked. "David, there's something wrong with my card. The bank says there's no money in my account. Can you fix this?" "There's nothing to fix, Mom," I told her calmly. "I've stopped making deposits to your account." Silence then. "What do you mean you stopped? Why would you do that? I think you know why. This is about Saturday night, isn't it? You're punishing me because I tried to maintain some standards at a nice restaurant." "I'm not punishing anyone. I'm simply no longer paying for your lifestyle." She started yelling then, demanding to know how she was supposed to pay her bills, how she was supposed to eat, what she was supposed to do. I let her vent for a few minutes. Then I said, "You'll figure it out the same way most people do." "But David, I can't work. My arthritis. You can file for disability, you can get food stamps, you can downsize your living situation. You have options, Mom. You just don't like them." Thursday morning, Jessica called. She was crying. "David, what are you doing?" Mom called me hysterical. She says you've cut her off completely and my car insurance just got canceled. Yes, I stopped paying for everyone's insurance and their cars and their rent subsidies and their credit cards and their savings accounts. You can't just abandon your family. I'm not abandoning anyone. I'm simply not funding anyone's lifestyle anymore. There's a difference. "But we depend on you." "Yes, I know, that's the problem. This is insane. You're destroying our lives over one dinner." "No, Jessica, I'm not destroying anything. I'm just no longer building it up with my money." Friday, the real estate agent called to tell me we'd received an offer on Mom's house. It was a good offer, close to asking price. I accepted it. That evening, Mom showed up at our house. Sarah was upstairs resting, and I answered the door to find Mom standing there with red eyes and a desperate expression. "Please, David, we need to talk." I let her in, and we sat in the living room. She looked around at our house, the house I bought and decorated, filled with nice furniture and art, and I could see her calculating in her head. "I don't understand why you're doing this," she said. "I raised you. I sacrificed everything for you and Jessica after your father died. How can you just abandon me now?" "You didn't abandon me, Mom. You did what parents are supposed to do. You took care of your children, but I'm not your child anymore, and you're not entitled to my money. But I can't survive without your help." "Sure you can. You just can't live the way you've been living." She was quiet for a moment, then said, "This is about Sarah, isn't it? You're choosing her over your own family. This is about respect. You treated my pregnant wife like garbage. You humiliated her in public. You told her to eat in the bathroom because she was making you uncomfortable. I was just trying to maintain some dignity. That restaurant was expensive and classy, and she was being disruptive. She had morning sickness. Mom, she's carrying your grandchild. She could have stayed home. She could have, but she came because she wanted to celebrate Jessica's anniversary. She baked a cake from scratch. She bought a new dress. She was excited to be there, and you treated her like she was trash." Mom was crying now. "I'm sorry. Okay, I'm sorry. I'll apologize to Sarah. I'll make it right." "No, you won't. Because you don't actually think you did anything wrong. You think I'm overreacting. You think Sarah is being too sensitive. You think your behavior was justified." She didn't deny it, which told me everything I needed to know. "Please don't sell my house," she whispered. "I've lived there for 5 years. It's my home. It's my house, Mom. It was always my house. You've been living there as my guest. But where will I go? That's not my problem anymore." Saturday morning, Jessica and Mark showed up. Mark looked uncomfortable and embarrassed. Jessica looked furious. "You're being completely unreasonable." She started in before she was even through the door. "Mom is 62 years old. She can't just start over." "She's not starting over. She's just going to live within her actual means instead of mine. This is crazy. You're going to make her homeless." "No one's making her homeless. She has options. She can get a small apartment. She can apply for senior housing. She can move in with you." Jessica's face went white. "We can't afford to support her. Neither can I, apparently." "But you make so much money." "Yes, I do. And I've been sharing it generously with both of you for years, but generosity has to be mutual. You have to treat the people providing for you with respect." Mark finally spoke up. "Look, David, what happened at dinner was wrong. My parents were horrified. We all were. But don't you think you're going a little too far?" "Here's what I think, Mark. I think that if Jessica had treated your mother the way she treated my wife, you'd have walked out too. I think you're only here asking me to calm down because your lifestyle is about to change." He didn't argue with that. "What do you want?" Jessica asked. "An apology? Fine. I'm sorry, Mom. Sorry. We're all sorry. Can we please just go back to normal now?" "No," I said simply. "Because this isn't about apologies. This is about consequences. You treated my wife badly because you thought you could get away with it. You thought I'd just absorb it and keep writing checks. You were wrong." That's when Sarah came downstairs. She'd been listening from the hallway, and she looked sad but determined. "I don't want to be the reason for family problems," she said quietly. "If it would help, I can apologize for leaving dinner early." "Absolutely not," I said firmly. "You're not apologizing for anything." Mom looked at Sarah hopefully. "Oh, honey, if you could just—" "No," I interrupted. "Sarah is not apologizing for having morning sickness. She's not apologizing for being pregnant. She's not apologizing for existing. The conversation is over." Over the next few weeks, reality set in for both Mom and Jessica. Mom's house sold quickly and she had to find somewhere else to live. She ended up in a small apartment across town close to the bus line. She applied for disability and food assistance, both of which she qualified for, though her monthly income dropped from $3,000 to about $1,200. Jessica and Mark had to move out of the house they'd been renting from me at below market rate. They found a smaller place further from the city, and Jessica had to pick up extra shifts at the hospital to make ends meet. The $50,000 savings account I'd been contributing to was frozen, and they had to abandon their plans to buy a house. Both of them called me dozens of times over those weeks. The conversations followed the same pattern: anger, bargaining, guilt-tripping, promises to change, and finally acceptance. I remained cordial but firm. I wasn't punishing them, I was simply no longer subsidizing them. The most interesting change was in their attitudes towards Sarah. Suddenly, they were very interested in making amends. Mom sent flowers with a long apology note. Jessica offered to throw Sarah a baby shower. Both of them started calling regularly to check on how she was feeling, but it was too little too late. Sarah was polite, but distant. She didn't trust their sudden change of heart, and neither did I. It was obvious they were trying to get back in my good graces to restore their financial security. About 6 weeks after the dinner incident, we had a family gathering for Sarah's baby shower. Sarah's family hosted it, and they invited Mom and Jessica out of politeness. The contrast was stark. Sarah's family, teachers, nurses, small business owners, people who work for their living, treated everyone with warmth and respect. They were genuinely excited about the baby and went out of their way to make sure Sarah felt loved and supported. Mom and Jessica were on their best behavior, almost desperately so. They complimented Sarah constantly, brought expensive gifts they clearly couldn't afford, and tried to insert themselves into conversations about the baby, but there was an underlying tension. They kept looking at me hopefully, waiting for some sign that their good behavior was earning them a reprieve. It wasn't. After the shower, Mom asked if we could talk privately. We went out to the backyard of Sarah's parents' house. "You've made your point," she said. "We treated Sarah badly and we're sorry, really, truly sorry. But how long is this going to go on? When can we be a family again?" "We are a family," I told her. "We just have different financial arrangements now." "But I'm struggling, David. Really struggling. The apartment is tiny and the neighborhood isn't safe. I can barely afford groceries. You're living the way most people your age live when they haven't saved enough for retirement." But I couldn't save. I was supporting you and Jessica, and I appreciate that. That's why I supported you for 5 years, but that chapter is over now. "So, you're never going to help me again ever?" I thought about that for a moment. "I'll help you in emergencies. If you need medical care you can't afford, I'll pay for it. If your apartment becomes uninhabitable, I'll help you find something safe. But I'm not going back to funding your lifestyle." What's the difference? The difference is respect, basic human decency, treating my wife like a person instead of an inconvenience. 3 months later, Sarah gave birth to our son. Mom and Jessica were at the hospital within hours bringing flowers and balloons and stuffed animals. They were incredibly attentive and helpful, and I could see they were genuinely happy about their grandson and nephew. But I also noticed they kept mentioning how expensive babies are, how much help new parents need, how important family support is during this time. The message was clear. They were hoping the baby would soften my resolve and open my wallet again. It didn't work. Don't get me wrong, I didn't cut them out of our lives entirely. They're welcome at family gatherings. They can visit their grandson whenever they want. We have holiday dinners and birthday parties, but the financial relationship is over. Mom eventually adjusted to her new circumstances. She made friends in her apartment complex, started volunteering at a local charity, and seemed to find purpose in ways that didn't involve spending my money. She's still not happy about the situation, but she's managing. Jessica had a harder time adjusting. She and Mark went through a rough patch when money got tight, and at one point she asked if she could move back in with Mom. But they worked through it, and I think their marriage is stronger now that they're building their own life instead of living off my generosity. The most important outcome is that both of them treat Sarah with respect now. It might be motivated by self-interest, they're hoping to get back in my good graces, but the result is the same. Sarah is never insulted, never made to feel unwelcome, never treated as less than. They ask about her work, compliment her parenting, and include her in family conversations. Sarah still doesn't entirely trust them, and I don't blame her, but she's willing to maintain a cordial relationship for the sake of family harmony, especially now that we have a son who deserves to know his grandmother and aunt. As for me, I learned something important about family dynamics and money. When you financially support people for an extended period, they start to see that support as an entitlement rather than a gift. They begin to take it for granted, and worse, they start to treat the source of that support poorly because they assume it will continue regardless of their behavior. The truth is, I could afford to keep supporting Mom and Jessica indefinitely. The money I was spending on them was significant to them, but not a hardship for me. But money without respect is just enabling bad behavior. I also learned that Sarah is stronger than I gave her credit for. She never asked me to cut off my family. She never demanded apologies or revenge. She just wanted to be treated with basic dignity. When that didn't happen, she was prepared to accept it and move on. It was my decision to draw a line in the sand. Now, almost a year later, our family dynamic has settled into a new normal. We still get together for holidays and special occasions. Mom and Jessica are still part of our lives, but the power dynamic has shifted. They can no longer treat Sarah or me poorly and expect to face no consequences. Our son is growing up in a family where respect is expected and earned, not bought. He'll know his extended family, but he'll also see that his parents stand up for each other and don't tolerate disrespect. Sometimes people ask me if I regret how I handled the situation. They think I went too far, that I should have just demanded an apology and moved on. But I don't regret it. That dinner at Bella Vista was just the final straw in years of subtle disrespect and entitlement. My wife deserved better. And my son deserves to grow up in a family where his mother is treated with dignity. The people in your life need to understand that your generosity comes with the expectation of basic human decency. If they can't meet that minimal standard, then they need to learn to live without your help. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone is to let them face the consequences of their choices. It forces them to grow up, take responsibility, and hopefully become better people. As for that perfect day Mom wanted for Jessica, it turns out perfect days aren't about expensive restaurants or fancy surroundings. They're about being surrounded by people who treat each other with love and respect. Once Mom and Jessica figured that out, we started having genuinely perfect days again, just not at my expense. But the story doesn't end there. About 18 months after our son was born, something happened that really put everything into perspective and showed me I'd made the right decision. Sarah and I were planning our son's first birthday party when she suggested we invite everyone, both our families, friends, co-workers. It was going to be a big celebration at our house and she wanted it to be special. I was hesitant about including Mom and Jessica, not because I didn't want them there, but because I wasn't sure how they would behave in our home around Sarah's family and our friends. Sarah insisted though. They've been better lately, she said. And I want Tommy to grow up knowing his whole family, even if things are complicated. So, we invited them. Mom showed up with a homemade gift, a photo album she'd put together with pictures from my childhood, some of Sarah during her pregnancy, and the first photos of Tommy. It was thoughtful and personal, clearly something she'd spent time on, rather than just buying something expensive. Jessica brought a practical gift too, a diaper bag she'd sewn herself with Tommy's name embroidered on it. During the party, I overheard Mom talking to Sarah's mother, Ellen. They were watching Tommy play with some blocks, and Ellen was talking about how proud she was of Sarah for managing work and motherhood so well. She's remarkable, Mom said, and I could tell she meant it. I didn't appreciate that about her before. I was so focused on what I thought David needed that I didn't see what he actually had. Ellen smiled. Sarah's always been independent. Even as a little girl, she insisted on doing things herself. David's lucky to have someone so strong. He is, Mom agreed. And I'm lucky she's forgiven me for being such a fool. Later that evening, after most of the guests had left, Jessica approached me while I was cleaning up. She looked nervous, which was unusual for her. David, can I ask you something? Sure. Do you think you'll ever trust me again? Really trust me? I stopped what I was doing and looked at her. What do you mean? I mean, I know you'll never go back to paying for everything like before, and I'm not asking you to. Mark and I are doing fine on our own now. Better than fine, actually. But sometimes I feel like you're waiting for me to mess up again, to say something awful to Sarah, or show my true colors. I considered her question carefully. Over the past year and a half, Jessica had been consistently respectful to Sarah. She'd offered genuine help during difficult nights with the baby, celebrated Sarah's work achievements, and never once made a snide comment about her background or choices. I think trust has to be rebuilt slowly, I told her. You hurt Sarah badly that night, and before that night, there were a lot of smaller cuts. It's going to take time. I know. And I want you to know that I'm not being nice to Sarah because I want something from you. I'm being nice because I finally realized what a complete bitch I was before, and I'm ashamed of how I acted." That conversation stuck with me because it felt genuine in a way that their earlier apologies hadn't. Jessica wasn't performing for my benefit. She was actually reflecting on her behavior and its impact. A few months later, we had a real test of this new dynamic. Sarah had a miscarriage scare at around 8 weeks pregnant with our second child. She ended up in the emergency room at 2 a.m., bleeding and terrified. I called Jessica because she was a nurse and I needed someone who could help me understand what the doctors were telling us. Jessica dropped everything and met us at the hospital. She stayed with Sarah while I dealt with paperwork and insurance, holding her hand and explaining the procedures in terms she could understand. When the bleeding stopped and the doctors confirmed the baby was okay, Jessica cried with relief almost as much as Sarah did. "I was so scared we were going to lose them," she told me later. "Not just the baby but both of them. Sarah's become like a real sister to me, and I couldn't stand the thought of losing that." That's when I knew the change in Jessica was real. She wasn't thinking about money or her relationship with me. She was genuinely concerned about Sarah's well-being. Mom's transformation took longer, but it was equally genuine. The turning point came when Tommy was about 2 years old and got really sick with a stomach bug. Sarah and I were exhausted from sleepless nights and I had to travel for work. Without being asked, Mom showed up at our door with homemade soup and offered to help. She spent 3 days at our house doing laundry, cleaning, and taking care of Tommy so Sarah could rest. She never complained, never made it about herself, never expected anything in return. When I got back from my trip, Sarah told me that Mom had been incredible. She didn't try to take over or tell Sarah she was doing things wrong. Sarah said she just helped, and she kept saying how sorry she was that she wasn't more supportive when Sarah was pregnant with Tommy. That evening, Mom and I sat on the back porch while Sarah put Tommy to bed. "I've been thinking about that night at the restaurant," she said. "I replay it in my head sometimes and I'm horrified by what I said to her." "What horrifies you most about it?" I asked. "That I was so concerned with how things look to other people that I forgot basic human kindness." Sarah was sick and scared carrying my grandchild, and instead of protecting her, I attacked her. "What kind of person does that?" "A person who lost sight of what really matters," I said. "But people can change." "Have I changed enough?" she asked. "Have I earned forgiveness?" "That's not really up to me," I told her. "You'd have to ask Sarah." The next morning, I found Mom and Sarah talking quietly in the kitchen while Tommy ate his breakfast. Mom was crying and Sarah was holding her hand. "She asked me to forgive her," Sarah told me later. "Really asked, not just said sorry and expected me to get over it. She wanted to know what she could do to make things right, how she could be the mother-in-law and grandmother I deserved." "What did you tell her?" "That I'd already forgiven her. That watching her with Tommy these past few days, seeing how much she loves him and how hard she's trying to be better, that was enough for me." Now, 5 years after that disastrous dinner, our family dynamic is completely different. Mom lives simply but contentedly in her small apartment. She volunteers at a literacy program and has a small circle of friends. Jessica and Mark bought a modest house and are talking about having kids of their own. Both women treat Sarah with genuine respect and affection. More importantly, they've both learned to be grateful for what they have, rather than entitled to what they think they deserve. The financial pressure of supporting themselves has made them more resourceful, more humble, and ultimately more satisfied with their lives. Sarah and I now have 2 children. Tommy is 4 and his sister Emma just turned 2. Both kids adore their grandmother and aunt, and they're growing up seeing a family where everyone treats each other with respect and kindness. I still make good money, and occasionally I help out with genuine emergencies. When Mom needed dental work she couldn't afford, I paid for it. When Jessica's car broke down and they couldn't afford repairs, I helped with that too. But these are exceptions, not the rule, and they're met with genuine gratitude rather than expectation. The most satisfying part of this whole experience has been watching Sarah flourish without the constant undercurrent of family tension. She's confident in her role as a mother and wife, pursues her career goals without judgment, and has developed a genuinely warm relationship with my family. Our kids are growing up in a home where their mother is respected and valued, which I think will serve them well in their own relationships someday. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd handled things differently that night at Bella Vista. If I'd yelled, made a scene, demanded immediate apologies, I don't think it would have led to the same outcome. The shock of losing their financial security forced Mom and Jessica to really examine their behavior and make lasting changes. A dramatic confrontation might have felt satisfying in the moment, but it wouldn't have addressed the underlying issues. The lesson I learned is that sometimes the kindest thing you can do for someone is to let them face the natural consequences of their choices. It's not easy and it's not quick, but it can lead to real growth and genuine change. As for that perfect day Mom wanted for Jessica, it turns out perfect days aren't about expensive restaurants or fancy surroundings. They're about being surrounded by people who treat each other with love and respect. Once Mom and Jessica figured that out, we started having genuinely perfect days again.